It's a beautiful Monday to be talking about sports with Lights Sports Breakdown. I'm going to be talking today about a particular sport that's coming back in 18 days, I would say. I'm talking baseball, and two particular teams that I'm speaking of are the New York teams, Mets, Yankees, and which of these two teams will be running their division this year. Both teams look very promising, and I'm going to be examining both rosters and what key moves they've made this offseason that will ultimately put them over the top and win their division. So let's talk about the Mets. They did what can be considered the biggest trade acquisition this offseason by acquiring starting shortstop Francisco Lindor and starting pitcher Carlos Carrasco from the Cleveland Indians. Both these moves are very, very crucial because it improves the shortstop position for the Mets, and the Mets gain another starting pitcher. Obviously, because Noah Syndergaard is still on the IL, once he returns, he'll improve that rotation even more. And on paper, this starting rotation looks very dangerous with two-time Cy Young winner Jacob deGrom. Carlos Carrasco, recently he's been dealing with a soreness in his elbow, but he said that he experienced the same thing last year during the Indians training camp. They also acquired Taijuan Walker in the offseason. They still have Marcus Stroman, and when Noah Syndergaard returns, they in essence have a six-man rotation that could be very dangerous. Besides Francisco Lindor they acquired in the offseason, they also acquired James McCann, catcher, who improves that position as well. There was a lot of rumors that the Mets were going to go after JT Realmuto and George Springer, but they ended up getting James McCann and Francisco Lindor, and I would say that's a pretty good move, regardless that you struck out on a couple of other big names. But besides Lindor and McCann, you still have Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, J.D. Davis. You also have Michael Conforto, Brandon Nimmo, and they have a good starting lineup that I think will be even better than it was last year. And it's really exciting to see the Mets have this expectation and pressure because Lindor is a generational talent, and I think he can take this team to new heights. But another reason why I believe that this Mets team is going to do very well this year is because during the offseason, the Marlins pretty much stayed stagnant. The Phillies, they did re-sign Didi Gregorius and JT Realmuto to the team. But one of their biggest acquisitions was acquiring Archie Bradley in the offseason. Now they have a legitimate closer. That's one of the main concerns for the Phillies last year. They could get leads, but then their closer would just collapse and they would just lose. But besides that, the only other major competition, I think, besides those teams is the Washington Nationals, because they did acquire first baseman Josh Bell from the Pittsburgh Pirates. They also acquired closer Brad Hand, and they signed Will Harris, who would shore up their bullpen, and they also signed John Lester in the offseason. So the Nationals, obviously, they won their World Series 2 years ago, and I think they are going to be a dangerous team. A lot of people will have them under the radar, but I think it's going to be between the Mets, Phillies, and Nationals this year. I think the Mets have the edge, obviously, with their rotation, and I think they've improved their bullpen a lot. And Edwin Diaz has looked very good this spring training. Obviously, he's had his struggles his first 2 or 3 years with the team, but I think he can regain to form, and he will justify why the Mets brought him to the organization in the first place. But I believe that the Mets are a top 3 team in the NL. Obviously, they're going to be fighting for a top spot because, the Dodgers and the Padres also have high expectations this year after the Dodgers acquired Trevor Bauer and the Padres acquired Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, and Joe Musgrove this offseason. So it's going to be very exciting. But I believe the Mets will ultimately come out of their division on top. And I think they'll honestly have an easier time than the Yankees, and this is why. Let's talk about the New York Yankees. So, the New York Yankees pretty much kept their team intact. They re-signed DJ LeMahieu for another 6 years. He's been very good for the team, one of their best hitters that they've ever had. They've also acquired two key pieces that will shore up their rotation. And currently, their rotation is set up with ace Jarrett Cole. They signed Corey Kluber to a one-year deal. Last year, he was with the Texas Rangers, and he ultimately only played one inning and injured his forearm, and it just wasn't a good time for Corey Kluber. They also acquired Jameson Taillon from the Pittsburgh Pirates, who was best friends with Garrett Cole when they were both on the Pittsburgh Pirates. So it's kind of cool that both best friends are on the same team. So it's very exciting for them. They still have Jordan Montgomery, and the fifth spot's kind of up in the air because they've regained Domingo Germán after his offseason issues, and he missed all of last year because of those issues, but now he has been reinstated, so he is fighting for a spot. They also have young studs like Deivi Garcia and Clark Schmidt who want to gain a spot and cement their place on this roster. But the main concern with the Yankees this year is that they have a dangerous lineup. They improved their rotation. The bullpen even got better. They also acquired Justin Wilson and Darren O'Day during the offseason, and I feel like those two acquisitions will be big. Obviously, they lost Tommy Kahnle, and Zach Britton is out for a bone spur or something had a bone issue, so now he's going to be out for at least 6 weeks. And they still have their Aroldis Chapman, their closer, and they have guys like Michael King. They have Jonathan Loaizaga. They also have Luis Sessa. So this Yankees team is very deep, but they just have to make runs. They can't rely on the home run ball. They have to keep the ball in play. And also when they gain a lead, they have to keep it. A lot of times last year, they would have a lead and then they would just collapse. So that'll be a big thing that they have to do this offseason. The Orioles, Red Sox, and Rays got significantly worse this year. The Rays obviously traded away Blake Snell, and it was very shocking because he's won a Cy Young, and they just went off from a World Series run against the Dodgers. Obviously, they lost, but it's very unfortunate that they got rid of him. It's kind of good for the Yankees, but not for them. But they still have Tyler Glass now. And the other main issue in their division is the Toronto Blue Jays. They made some big signings this offseason, acquiring George Springer, signing him to a major contract, so he's a star in that outfield. They also acquired Kirby Yates, who is an all-star closer, and Steven Matz and Marcus Semien in the offseason. Marcus is a second baseman, and Steven Matz is the starting pitcher that was previously on the New York Mets, and now he's on the Toronto Blue Jays. And I think it's going to be a big battle between Toronto and the Yankees for this division. So that is why I believe that the Mets will have an easier time in their division, because the Phillies, like I said, only really major move was around Muto, Didi Gregorius, and signing Archie Bradley. But I don't believe that will be enough. They still have some other issues in the infield and outfield that I think will keep them from achieving that World Series caliber team. And the Nationals, I think they'll be there, but I don't think they'll be able to stand a chance against the Mets. Obviously, their defense was not really atrocious, but it wasn't as good as it should have been. They've made a lot of issues, but with Lindor, he is a generational talent on defense and offense. He's a switch hitter. He can hit left, he can hit right. It's just, I know I'm speaking very highly of just one baseball player, but I think that Lindor can honestly change a franchise. And the Indians made the playoffs several times. They did have Lindor, and they do have Jose Ramirez and Carlos Santana, but Lindor will be big, and I think it will pay dividends for the Mets. And I think both New York teams should be very excited this offseason and for what they did this offseason, and as well as going into opening day. These two teams are very exciting to watch. Main issue with the Yankees is health. If they can stay healthy, I think they can run this deep into October. And with the Mets, I think they still can make a little bit more moves. And the Yankees can also make moves as well because they have some trade chips. So let's see how these two New York teams go. But it's very good to see both New York teams having a good offseason and have high expectations this year. So go Yankees, go Mets, and thanks for watching Lights Sports Breakdown.